Welcome back. Another disappearance for you this time, and this is Richard James Edwards. He's better known by Richy Edwards or Richy Manic. Richy was the rhythm guitarist and co-lyricist for the punk/alternative rock band the Manic Street Preachers. I'm going to go into his past life a bit, give you an idea as to the kind of man that he was, and it also give you a look into his mindset before the disappearance. Born on the 22nd of December 1967 and raised in Blackwood, Wales. His parents were Graham and Sherry Edwards. He had a younger sister who was born in '69. They were pretty close. Richy went to Oakdale Comprehensive School and attended the University of Wales between '86 and '89. Here he got his degree in political history, but it was at Oakdale Comprehensive School that he met Nicky Wire, Sean Moore and James Dean Bradfield, his future bandmates. When he joined the Manics, he wasn't actually a member, so to speak. He was a spokesperson for the band and a roadie. He also drove them around. Soon after that, he became the fourth member in '89. Edwards wasn't a particularly gifted guitarist and would only be miming on stage during the earlier gigs. He was gifted in writing lyrics along with his bandmate Nicky Wire, the bassist. Edwards is also said to have actually written at least 80% of the Holy Bible, which was their third album, I think. Edwards in fact had sole credit on 3 songs on the Everything Must Go album, despite sharing credit on all other songs. Despite his lack of musical prowess, Richy Edwards definitely contributed to the band's direction and sound. Richy had even had ideas for an album that was described as Pantera meets Nine Inch Nails meets Screamadelica, which sounds pretty good to me, but it's been talked about by the band's lead vocalist and guitarist, James Dean Bradfield, and stated that he was worried that he wouldn't have been able to produce the sound that Richy wanted, and that it would also cause rifts in the band. Now I'm going to move on to Richy's darker side. On the 15th of May 1991, Edwards gained his notoriety. It was a gig at the Norwich Arts Centre. Edwards was in an argument with Steve Lamacq, he's a musical journalist. And Lamacq wanted to ensure that the punk ethic wasn't being abused by the band. So Lamacq asked Edwards, basically, how serious are you about your art? At which point Richy takes out a razor blade and carves 4 reel into his arm. An injury that led to 18 stitches and became quite infamous because there was a discussion at Enemy, I think it was, about whether the image should carry on being used or not. And that discussion wound up being used as the bonus track for Suicide is Painless. Edwards suffered severely from depression in his adult life and was always very open about it in his interviews. He used to self-harm regularly by putting cigarettes out on his arm or cutting himself. He's quoted as saying, "When I cut myself, I feel so much better. All the little things that might have been annoying me suddenly seem so trivial because I'm concentrating on the pain. I'm not a person who can scream and shout, so this is my only outlet. It's all done very logically." So, he seems to use it as an escape. He also suffered from insomnia, which he would use large amounts of alcohol to use as a sleeping pill alternative, I guess, knock himself out of it. In 1994, just before the release of the Holy Bible album, Richy would check himself into Whitchurch Hospital in Wales, and then later the Priory in London, which are both mental health institutions. This would result in Richy missing out on playing Reading Festival and Tea in the Park. The band would go on to play as a 3-piece without him, as well as some tour promotional work. But it was for his health, so it was all the greater good. Edwards was released from Priory Hospital in September of '94 and returned to the band for a European tour with Therapy, Suede, and Therapy and Suede. So just clarify, it's two different bands. That was his last tour. Edwards' final show was on December 21st that year, playing at the London Astoria. It's quite an infamous show as it ended with You Love Us, that was the song, and Edwards basically destroyed his guitar, started smashing up the lighting setup and all that, and the band joined in, and that was how the show finished. Edwards' final media appearance was to a Japanese music magazine called Music Life on January 23rd in 1995. Edwards was due to travel to the US for a promotional tour with the Holy Bible on February 1st with bandmate James Dean Bradfield. He disappeared that day. In the 2 weeks before he disappeared, Edwards would go and withdraw £200 a day, adding up to £2,800. By the day that the flight was scheduled, he had that amount. Many people have speculated that he needed the money for the US trip. Others have said that he brought a desk in Cardiff for his house. But even with buying that desk, that would only amount to about half of what he'd withdrawn. And it doesn't seem like the desk had actually been paid for at all. There's no record of the purchase, no receipts or anything. According to director and novelist Emma Forrest, the night before he disappeared, Edwards gave her a book called Novel with Cocaine on my veil. I don't know, spelt novel. Anyway, it was instructing her to read the introduction to the book, which had details of the writer staying in a mental asylum before going missing. Had that before. And apparently he was staying in the Embassy Hotel in London. Edwards had removed some of the books and VHS tapes from his bag. VHS is like an old version of a DVD. Blu-ray? Streaming? Yeah. Anyway, he takes them out of his bag and puts them in a box with a note that says, "I love you." He then decorates this box like a little present, like a birthday present. And the package was addressed to his on and off girlfriend Jo. And they were broken up at the time, but the next morning Richard James Edwards would collect up his things, a wallet, car keys, some Prozac and his passport, and check out of the hotel at 7 a.m. All he left behind was a wash kit, a packed suitcase and some more Prozac. But he did try and give away his passport the night before to a woman that shared his room. He claimed that he wouldn't need it anymore. She refused it, and basically he left, drove to his flat in Cardiff. There he left his passport, his Prozac, and a receipt for the Severn Bridge toll booth. In the following 2 weeks, Richy was spotted at the Newport passport office and at the Newport bus station. At the bus station, it was by a fan who was actually unaware that he'd been missing. They spoke to each other for a bit about a friend called Laurie they had in common. Then Edwards left. On the 7th of February, a taxi in Newport picked up a strange Cockney man from the King's Hotel and drove him around the valleys, including Blackwood, Richy's hometown. The driver reported that the man had a strange Cockney accent, which seemed to keep slipping into a Welsh one. Anyway, the passenger, Edwards, asked to lie down in the back seat occasionally, and eventually they reached Blackwood bus station. Edwards just turns to him and says, "This isn't the place." He then asked to be taken to Pontypool railway station. On the way there, they obviously got talking, and I'm guessing that Edwards asked if there was a telephone at the station, and there was not, so he got dropped off at the Severn View service station in South Gloucestershire. He paid the £68 fare in cash, and that was it. A week later, on the 14th of February, Edwards Cavalier of Vauxhall received a parking ticket at the very same service station. And on the 17th, the car was reported abandoned, so the police came and picked it up, but they stated that the car looked lived in and claimed that there were photos of Edwards' family taken a few days before. Due to the service station's proximity to the Severn Bridge and the bridge's popularity as a suicide spot, most people assumed that Edwards had jumped. but many people that know him say that he wasn't the type to even contemplate suicide. In fact, he was quoted in '94 as saying that in terms of the S word, that does not enter my mind. It never has done, in terms of an attempt anyway, because I'm stronger than that. I might be a weak person, but I can take the pain. So, did the pain just get too much for him, or did he just decide to give up? If he did, he'd have joined the Forever 27 club, like many of the rock stars. Hendrix included, the Rev from Sevenfold. I could go on and on. Robert Johnson. Is Robert Johnson? I'll have to do a video on him. Anyway, I'm off the topic now. So did he kill himself, join the 27 club, or get himself a fake passport and fly off overseas? Since then, Richy has been spotted in a marketplace in Goa, on the Isles of Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, as well as many other places. Most of these sightings were in the early years of his disappearance, so none of these reports turned up anything conclusive, or we'd have found him by now. However, in 2019, a book called Withdrawn Traces, Searching for the Truth about Richy Manic, stumbling a bit, the book was released in 2019. There have been books written about his case before, but there's something different about this book, something none of the other books had. This book had Richy Edwards' seal of approval. Rachel was his sister. So this book had a lot more access to the side of Richy that most of the books didn't. Most people didn't know any of the stuff that she knew about him, so, you know. So, as well as finding new eyewitness cases, this book actually had access to Richy's personal archives, his memoirs, his school work, anything Richy might have written down to suggest where he might have left and gone to. As it turns out, Richy had an obsession. It dated back to his school days. It was with reclusive writers and family members. You see, it wasn't just Richy that disappeared from his family. A few members just disappeared for years at a time without any contact. Great Aunt Bessie lived as a reclusive hermit for 8 years. Uncle Shane embarked on a voyage to the Americas in the 60s. He didn't contact the family for over 5 years. So his sister Rachel has acknowledged the fact that Richy may have had Asperger's, which is a lower level of Down syndrome. And a common symptom is being reclusive and shunning people. The book also speaks of a very important woman, a woman who was a friend of Edwards while they were in Whitchurch in Wales. Apparently in one conversation he mentions that he would much rather go to Israel than on his trip planned to America. And this woman, there's not much known about her. She was an artist in her 20s, and she was in the asylum with him. Is it asylum? Is that offensive? I don't know. Anyway, I'll get back to that part in a minute. Leon Noakes, the co-writer of the book, had been getting a haircut in Cardiff, and I guess the topic had come onto his research of Richy, and the lady cutting his hair basically just goes, "Oh yeah, Richy, he's in kibbutz, Israel. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Everyone knows that." Yeah, so she said he's in kibbutz, Israel. Everyone knows that. And at first, Leon didn't really pay any attention to the story because it's just another theory. And then he mentions the haircut to Rachel, and she just kind of further boosts this theory by saying, yeah, he did quite like Israel. He talked about it quite a lot. The theory is further boosted by the fact that just before he disappeared, he got on a tattoo relating to Israel, which, you know, it's quite a thing to permanently mark your body with something. Anyway, this woman, she got released from the hospital and she went on a little trip. Give you 3 guesses where she went. She travelled to Israel, presumably to go and find Richy. Like I said, nothing is known about this woman. Given her former residence, it's safe to assume she wasn't most stable. But she probably becomes starstruck, not by his fame or anything, but by his personality, and decided to join him in disappearing from the world and starting fresh. I'm not saying that this is fact, it's just my interpretation of why she went to Israel, which she did. As for what has actually happened to Richy, it's still unclear, as he's been legally declared missing, presumed dead since 2008. I say let the dead rest, even if that means escaping to Israel. He obviously needed the escape if he did do the disappearing act. It seems that he was not a well man. He'd suffered with anorexia, alcoholism, insomnia, drug abuse, as well as depression, leading to the self-harm. So it's possible that the pain had gotten too much for him, despite being able to handle it before. I guess we're never going to know, unless he returns from the grave. But until that day, rest in peace, Manic. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. I'll keep uploading as often as I can. Also, follow my other channel, Exploring with Eikenvargr. It's where I go exploring abandoned buildings, caves, bunkers, military bases and the like, so check it out. Thanks for watching.